pleasure. It's a great topic, isn't it? Even the word, pleasure. Whoa. As they pointed out, you know, from this accent, I'm sure you can work out, I was originally English. I was born in Great Britain, or Britain as it is now known, and we have an uneasy relationship with pleasure because it bumps up against that stiff upper lip thing, you know, and also because I don't think we're educated to be normal. I had an absolutely typical middle-class English upbringing. I was taken away from my family when I was 7.5 years old. I was placed in an all-male society until I was almost 18. I was sent to an all-boys boarding school, typical British boarding school. And I don't care who you are. If you have to go through the entire sexual jungle of adolescence solely in the company of other men, it has to leave some mark on you. I mean, I for one ascribe to that the fact that I've been married 4 times. Although I do feel that with each marriage I am getting closer to a woman. Not an observation I would share with my first wife, David. But seriously, those schools damaged us. You know, I mean, we had no idea how to treat women. At the school I went to, we had 1 dance a year with a neighboring girls' school, which was an all-girls boarding school. They had no more idea than we did. It was the blind leading the blind. And after one of these dances, I had fallen for one of these girls, and we would meet surreptitiously out on Hampstead Heath in the freezing cold weather, and we would walk together. This was our, you know, affair, and we would walk through the, you know, the rambles and things. And the height of this affair was about 6 weeks into it. We each took off 1 glove, and we walked holding hands, bare hands. Oh, those mad, passionate days of my youth. And then in the early 80s, I was in a workshop, a seminar for actors. It was like a weekend thing. And it was one of those things where you strip yourself psychologically bare and you rip off the mask of everyday nothingness and you break down the barriers that are standing between you and your true potential. And I don't think it worked for me. But basically, almost all of us got laid. Because once you start stripping down things, it just goes on, you know. But I digress. One of the exercises in the seminar was that they asked each of us to write a sentence that would encapsulate the way we feel about our life. And people wrote these heartfelt, deeply personal statements about their own lives. I wrote, "My life has been dominated by women and cheap jokes." And it got that sort of laugh. But actually, it was kind of true. I mean, I spent my life in search of pleasure. But what is pleasure? You know, philosophically, the concept of pleasure is all over the place. My favorite philosopher is Epicurus, the Greek philosopher, who believed that the greatest good in life was pleasure and the greatest evil was pain, and who believed that our purpose here on earth was to seek the greatest pleasure possible, but do no harm, which I think is a great philosophy, and so incidentally did Thomas Jefferson, who stated that he was an Epicurean, which is why we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you, which is completely Epicurean, you know. And especially when compared to the Germans, whose favorite, philosopher is Schopenhauer, who hated pleasure because he felt it got in the way of the natural state of man's existence, which is suffering. Those wacky Germans. So, I spent my life, seeking pleasure, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you name it, I did it, and it tires, it wears out. And you do find pleasure in work and in art and things, but I realized that what I was after was not pleasure in life, but rather a life of pleasure, which implied to me that I somehow had to find something bigger than just me. I had to be connected to somebody else. But as I pointed out, I am terrible at relationships. I mean, 4 marriages is useless, you know. And after 3, really, I mean, I hurt people, I abandoned people, I was not trustworthy, it was, you know. And after the 3rd marriage, I went, that's it, I give up, you know. And I became one of those guys in their early 40s who sort of staggers from one brief encounter to another. And in the midst of this, I met a woman called Jenny, who I really liked, but I basically was blowing the relationship because I was so wary of anything, and I never took anything seriously. I never dealt seriously with her. And after a sort of year of us basically fucking around, she turned to me, so to speak. She turned to me one day and she said, don't you want this? And I said, yes, I do want it, but I'm no good at this, and I don't want to fail anymore. And she looked at me and she said, well, what do you want from a relationship? And I went, oh no, it's girl talk. It's one of those, you know, those questions you can't answer, and the men shudder when they come up, and you know it's not going to end well, you know. But I leapt in and I said, you know what I want? I want it all. I want romance and passion and friendship and a home and a family, and I want the entire panoply of a life shared with somebody that I love. And she went, oh, really? Well, you know, if you really want that, you're going to have to ask for it. And I went, well, what does that mean? She said, you're going to have to ask for what you want. I said, I've got no idea what you're talking about. When? When am I supposed to actually doing this asking? But she said, now. What do you want now? And I thought, oh my God, it's a trick question. No, I'm going to fuck this up. And I went, I want to kiss you, which was a great answer because that took like a half hour, you know. and we were sort of coming up for air, and I'm thinking, I've got this nailed. This is great, you know. And she turns to me and says, now, what do you want? And I panicked because later that same evening, I had a date with another woman. And I went, I want to go home. She said, okay. And I said, I want to see you tomorrow. She said, okay. I said, don't you want to know why I want to go home? She said, no, it's none of my business. I said, this cannot be this easy. There's a trick somewhere. I said, wait a minute. What happens if what I want, when I ask for what I want, you know, conflicts with what you want when you ask for what you want? She said, well, then we would have to discuss it and decide what will be better for us, what you want or what I want. And without thinking, I said, I want to go home because later on tonight I'm going to meet up with Tina Barney. And there was this sort of pause. And I knew that Jenny knew Tina. Tina was an old friend of mine, a woman actually, as a girl, I met her on the boat when I was coming to America. She was from a very rich family in New York. We'd gone out and fooled around for the first couple of years that I was in America, and then she settled down, she got married, she had children, she disappeared from my life. And a few years earlier had reappeared at a friend's house in LA, now divorced, and we had started up again, but since she lived in New York, it was a sort of casual thing whenever she sort of came through. And Jenny's looking at me and she said, you're meeting Tina? And I said, yes. She's passing through LA, she's on her way to China. And I want to meet her. I want to tell her that nothing is ever going to work out between the two of us because I've met you. And I want to go home tonight because I want to be a decent guy. And I want to say this to this woman who has been my friend for 30 years. I don't want to blow her off. And there was this pause, and then Jenny took this step towards me. And then she reached up and she kissed me. And she said, you see what happens when you ask for what you want? And that was 30 years ago. We've been married for 27. We have children, we have grandchildren. And it's all because I ask for what I want. And every day I find something that makes me happy. So if I have anything for you tonight, it's that when you leave here, go out into the world and ask for what you want, seek pleasure, do no harm, and leave the suffering to the Germans.